Hey, vet friends. Well, we made it through class one. Hopefully, everybody did well. And now we're a week into musculoskeletal. And people have been telling me that they have been having issues understanding action and membrane potentials, as well as the difference between an end plate potential and the action potential. So I'm going to go over that just briefly here. I was kind of hoping that I'd be having some mad editing skills and be able to put a K and a CL and NA and have things floating around me, but I just don't have that ability to edit. I'm just going to be honest with you. I wish I had those math skills. I don't. So what I ended up doing is I drew up something on my whiteboard, took some pictures, and I'll be discussing it with you throughout the course of this video. Hopefully, it'll give you something to think about, something that you'll be able to better understand action potential, end plate potential, threshold potential, all of that good stuff. So one of the things that I understand may be confusing people is we're talking mainly about positive ions. So we talk about potassium, sodium, calcium, and they're all positive ions. Well, when they're inside and outside, and they're telling us the inside of the cell is more negative. Well, I can see the point of contention with, oh my gosh, there's a lot of potassium, a lot of potassium, a lot of potassium in the inside of the cell. Yeah, that's true. There is more potassium inside the cell than outside the cell, and that's for good reason. That's because our Na, K, ATPase pump is pushing more potassium into the cell and taking the sodium out of the cell. That being said, in the interior, in the interstitial fluid of that cell, you have negatively charged ions as well as negatively charged proteins. Those negatively charged proteins and ions take up so much of that intercellular space that's inside of the cell that it is going to create a negative charge on the inside of the cell. The positive ions help to balance that out. But if you get too many, like we were talking about with the horse this past week, and you have an influx of too much potassium, for instance, you can increase that cell's membrane potential. So the things that set the cell's membrane potential are sodium leak channels, potassium leak channels, and your sodium potassium pump. For every time that sodium potassium pump goes and brings two potassiums in, you're also bringing 3 sodiums out. So what are you doing? You're making that cell less negative by taking more positive ions out of that cell. Also, you have the potassium leak channels. Those potassium leak channels are going to allow the potassium to slowly leak out of the cell back where they are going to a lower area of concentration. They are going to do that slowly because potassium is a positive ion. It wants to be in the negative environment of the cell. So when it's trying to go through that cell membrane, through those potassium leak channels, it's not going to go as fast as if it were trying to come into the cell, like a sodium trying to get into the cell, having both the chemical and the concentration gradients in its favor. Hopefully that helps. So let's move on just briefly to our action potential, end plate potential. So end plate potential is basically going to be where at the neuromuscular junction, you're going to have the ACH going to ligand binding receptors and allowing sodium to come into the cell. So when that sodium enters the cell, it's going to gradiate. So where that sodium enters the cell is going to have the biggest change, the biggest fluctuation. It may even turn that area positive. But unless it hits a sodium voltage gated area where it creates the threshold potential of negative 45 millivolts, it is not going to cause a muscle contraction. However, if you have enough of them opening where your graded potential pushes out enough sodium into the cell, where you create a drop or an increase in your membrane potential from the negative 80 to the negative 45, you are going to cause a threshold to occur. Once it reaches that threshold, you're going to have sodium voltage gated sodium channels opening up. The sodium will then flood the cell, and you will depolarize the entire membrane of the cell very quickly within about 1.5 milliseconds. It goes very, very quickly. However, if you do not get the voltage gated area to threshold potential, it will not occur. So I'm just trying to wrap up this video here, trying to get everything edited for you. I hope this helps everybody that was struggling with membrane potential. If it doesn't, please feel free to let me know. We can chat via Zoom or Facebook, and I won't be so boring. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, and with a new video on regional limb section area stuff, because that was the other thing people were asking about. And I'm just trying to get this uploaded tonight. Thanks.